hello, hello. Hi, yes, me, Gail. Hi, Gail Carriger. I am here. I am in my office on a quiet Saturday afternoon, and I hope it stays quiet. And I think I have good working internet so that I can broadcast seamlessly. Let me know if you can hear me and everything. Hi, Charity. Yeah, let me know where you are tuning in from. And I am excited to take any questions that you have and talk about anything about upcoming books or writing related or what have you. I don't have anything really concretely planned, but hi Robin. Oh, this is great. Everything seems to be working. I love it when that happens. It's so rare. So yes, here's the next book that's coming out. I have it all ready. Ooh, there's that. There that happens. There it is. This is the next one. It's coming very, very soon. Less than 3 weeks. And I'm excited about it. It's really sweet. It's probably sort of the gentlest and kindest of the San Andreas books. Oh my god, hi Eddie! Oh wow, this is so cool! I can't believe it. It's so neat to see everyone tuning in, and some old friends that I haven't seen in a while. Manchester, UK? It must be late there for you, Carolyn. Yay! Right, excited Gail is excited and amped. I forgot to get myself some water, but that's okay. Hopefully, you will, Norway, of course. Hello, hello. Oh, Oregon. This is so good. Right, the Madam Gail show. Yes, thank you. Gail is a talking head. Let's do the usual questions I get, which are the turban is just like a pull-on turban-y thingy, and I get them on Amazon. This is a vintage piece that I picked up, and I can't remember where. It's a costume piece, but it's still a vintage piece. This is a cute little wrap dress that I got from Target a bazillion years ago, and my glasses are vintage that somebody, one of you guys, gave to me, and that I had my prescription put in. So that's what I'm wearing, and I have already had my tea, hence the reason that I have energy, and yay! So I'm ready for your questions. I'm excited about Enforcer Enigma. I think it is adorable, and I think it will cheer everybody up, or I hope it will. I will talk about this more in the Cheer Up, the next newsletter, when it goes out just after release day. But one of the things that Enforcer Enigma doesn't do is talk about Mana and Lovejoy very much, but there is a short story coming about them, so don't worry. There's more coming with them. It's just a little short story, and it is kind of interstitial in that it doesn't have much of a plot and it doesn't really stand on its own. So I'm probably gonna put it up in a weird way for you. It will eventually get wide release, of course, everything I do does, but so keep an eye for that, and it'll be towards the end of the year or the beginning of next year, the short story. But first, you have the actual book, The Enforcer Enigma, coming, and then after that is the Heroine's Journey, which is my nonfiction book. And that'll be October, and I'll have an actual date for you once I show you the cover art and get the pre-order set up. Right. Everybody is meeting each other in the comments and realizing that they live in the same state, and that's rather exciting. So I'm hoping, I'm hoping you have questions for me, maybe? You guys are trained into this, you know how it goes. Yes, and look at Lavender. Everybody, Lavender's comment demonstrates how to correctly ask a question. Thank you very much. Which is, if you have a question, please put a question mark at the beginning of the sentence, and that way I know as the comments go through that it's a question for me to pay attention to. And Lavender asks, how am I? Oh, the first question. Of course. We'll start with this one and then try to ignore it because that's my survival policy as a human, which is Borderlands. So Borderlands, which is my formerly much beloved and local independent bookstore that I have supported and has supported me in my career and bolstered me for many, many years is involved in a serious or the owner is involved in some serious sexual allegations, and they're incredibly unpleasant, and so trigger warnings all around if you choose to read up on this or research it at all. But I cannot be associated with that or have anything to do with them or support them at all at this juncture for that reason. So I have severed all ties with Borderlands, and that means that those of you who pre-ordered the Enforcer Enigma through them should have gotten or will soon get a refund from them for that book, and I will be unable to offer signed editions for Enforcer Enigma at this time. I don't know if that will change. The arrangement that we had that allowed me to offer signed editions is very unique and really hard to establish with a independent bookstore. So unfortunately, that's the situation. Don't worry, Enforcer Enigma will be available in print. It's delayed, and that's simply because I just can't move. The print industry does not move fast enough right now for me to be able to accelerate the production of the digital book, which I did. I bumped Enforcer Enigma up by several months to get it to you guys sooner rather than later. And the machinery of print just doesn't satisfy that. So already things are delayed printing wise, and you know this because if you've ordered a book online, it just takes a while to get to you right now. And the same is true from the back end. So when I order a print book to review it for proofing to make sure that the layout works and it looks good and it's like sufficient for the price that you guys have to pay for a print book, which is a lot these days, that just takes weeks of back and forthing, and the mail system is involved, and it just takes time to get a print book. So the print book will be available. The print book will be available exactly the same way as it has been in the past for this series. So however you got the Sumage solution or the Omega objection will be how you can get the Enforcer Enigma, except through Borderlands. So if you want to support an independent bookstore, I provided a list. My most recent blog post has a list of other independent bookstores that, so far as I know, there's nothing problematical about them, but I'm pretty gun shy right now. I feel relatively comfortable supporting particularly the Ripped Bodice, which is an independent bookstore out of LA, and they have always carried my San Andreas books in the past, so you should be able to get it from them. That is a woman-owned, woman-run bookstore in the LA area, and they have been instrumental in supporting diversity in the romance industry as well. So the Ripped Bodice is my choice if you are looking for a specific one, or I also have a list on my website of Black-owned bookstores. If you would like to support those, it's on the homepage of my website. I don't know if they have the capacity to get my print-on-demand independent books, though. I haven't double-checked. The problem with the print-on-demand books, which is the San Andreas books and the Parasolverse novellas and tie-in books, is they need to be ordered through a secondary supplier called Ingram, and there are just some bookstores that it's too much of a problem to work with Ingram, and so they just can't get those books. But I do have a list on my website, the first blog post, if you go look at it, that has all of the independent bookstores that I know for certain in the past have carried my print-on-demand books from Ingram, so you should be able to get it there. Otherwise, Ripped Bodice. I believe Ripped Bodice is still open and still doing pickup and all of that sort of stuff. So that's what's going on with the print book and signed editions. And right, I'm scrolling back through. There's Lavender's question, and now we're moving on to the next one. Melissa, will Heroine's Journey be in print edition form as well? Absolutely. At first, actually, with the Heroine's Journey, I was planning on doing 2 different covers. I was going to offer one print cover and one ebook cover, but when Starla and I were working on the cover, we did the ebook cover we did the print cover first, and I liked it so much that it's also going to be the ebook cover. I might recover going forward, but it's a beautiful cover, and I'm really, really happy with it. So long as it works, it might not be the right cover. That's the thing with nonfiction. But so long as it works to sell the book and get an audience and everything, it will be the same cover on print and electronic. And yes, I plan to produce the print book of the Heroine's Journey exactly in the same way and size and in paperback form as I have done with my other Parasol verse novellas and the San Andreas books and Fifth Gender and stuff. So, which means it'll be that 8x5 size, and it'll be paperback. There is a possibility with nonfiction that a press might like it or get excited about it and pick it up for subsidiary rights, and then it will get a hardback, but I personally have no intention at this juncture in producing hardbacks in general for any of my stuff. It's prohibitively expensive. Doc asks if there could be a short story about Lord Akaldama visiting a superstore. That sounds like fanfic. How's Lilliput? Lilliput, my cat, is great. She is getting increasingly spoiled with her 2 humans home pretty much all the time, and very demanding. And I was saying just this morning that I feel like she actually understands full human sentences at this juncture. We will just talk to her like she's the 3rd person in our household, which she basically is, and she will like jump down and go do something if you tell her to, and like come running if you ask her to. You don't even have to call her by tone anymore. Yeah, it's getting bad. We're going crack crazy at our house. Stein wants to know if marine biology is a good place to start with the San Andreas books. Yes, it is. Marine biology is not so marine biology is the prequel short story to all of the San Andreas books, and it sets up the alpha and the alpha mate couple of the pack, the people in charge of the pack, but it's only a short story, and they never get a full-length romance. But they are important, very important characters to all of the rest of the books. So I think for that reason, marine biology should be read first. But also, from a creative story writing perspective, it was because I wrote marine biology that I got inspired to write the whole San Andreas Shifters universe. So, because marine biology was a story that I just wrote off the cuff because it was asked for by an anthology, which I don't even do anymore. And I loved it so much, and I had so much fun writing contemporary paranormal romance that I was like, oh, I should write a whole series about contemporary paranormal romance. And that short story just sets up a whole bunch of stuff. It sets up the pack, it sets up the pack dynamic, and it sets up like the inciting incident for the pack moving from the East Coast to the West Coast. So yes, I do think you should read marine biology first. Jesse wants to know, what is the subject of the Heroine's Journey? So the Heroine's Journey is basically my rebuttal to the general zeitgeist discussion and acceptance of the hero's journey as a core narrative element for storytellers, writers, screenwriters, movies, that kind of thing. So everybody in the writing world and many people in the reading world know about the hero's journey, and it's taught in schools. There are plenty of books about it, but if you study classical mythology and gender analysis in the classic works of the ancient Greeks and the Romans, you also know that there is a heroine's journey, and it's materially different, not in beats, archetypal use, narrative elements, tropes, and themes, and messaging. But there is no definitive work on the heroine's journey as there is with the hero's journey. And so I've been waiting for a decade now, more, for someone to write that. And nobody has, and so eventually I did. I have written it in a non-academic way, so I've basically written it as a guide for storytellers. And so essentially I present the beats of of the heroine's journey, and then I talk about the core myths that it's rooted in. And then I talk about two classic pop culture examples that you've probably read that use the heroine's journey. And then I talk about how to write it and how to identify it basically in pop culture, and some of the like core things you can use if you are a writer and you're experiencing writer's block, but also as readers or consumers of television series or movies, like how you can identify it basically. And then what our relationship with it as Western culture in particular says about us as humans and as storytellers and as writers and custodians of narrative. And it's written like this, like me. It's not, I don't use a lot of academic lingo or anything. I do it kind of very casually, because I'm not pretending to be an expert on this. Like, my foundation as somebody who has a relationship with the heroine's journey is just that everything I've ever written is a heroine's journey. So essentially I have a career because of this core narrative chassis. And it's just, I've spent so many years, you know, at conventions and doing lives and like this, and doing interviews on podcasts and stuff, talking about the heroine's journey and kind of assuming that everybody knows about it. And finally I just had to acknowledge that, like, that's just not the case. And you know, I wrote Soulless because I was hunting for that book. I was hunting for urban fantasy in a historical setting with a lot of humor and comedy and a strong romantic backbone, and nobody was writing that book. And finally I was like, okay, I guess I have to write that book. And 10 years later, exactly the same thing is happening again, only this time with nonfiction. And my mother always told me that, you know, she who spots the problem is responsible for the solution. It's a big risk writing nonfiction, but I waited for someone else to write this, or for someone to do their PhD on this and then publish, and it doesn't seem to be happening. So I wrote it, and we'll see. I don't, before you ask, I don't see myself turning to nonfiction permanently or setting myself up as a teacher of this or as doing master classes or any of that kind of stuff. I just wrote it as a kind of patch for now, and I'm hoping more than anything that it sort of sparks dialogue, and other people will kind of like go out and start really researching these myths and presenting alternative models and stuff into the world. So yeah, so that's the heroine's journey, and we'll see. And he wants to know when the Mana and Lovejoy story is coming. When I don't have a title for something, it means I don't have a date for it. And that's the case with the Mana and Lovejoy story, because that's what I'm calling it right now. It's really nascent. It's very, it needs work and stuff. But so, you know, the soonest it would be, you know, at the very end of the year, but probably more likely the beginning of next year. I don't know. It'll happen when it needs to happen, is that story. And when I've decided how I want to bring it out, because you do have to have read all of the other books in the series. So I want to give people time to have read all of the other books in the series. But also, that's a big ask to release a short story with the expectation that you've read another short story and 3 novels is a big ask. And so when I'm like writing the description of it and stuff, I have to make sure that's made clear, or readers will be really angry with me for like setting this up as a story and then it's not really cohesive. It's basically like a little bit of fan service, right? So I have to figure out how to distribute it in a way that, yeah. So it's probably gonna like go to the newsletter first in some way, but I just haven't figured out how. And I'm thinking of like, you know, making it sort of a charity, like all the proceeds go to a charity or something, because of the subject matter and some of the reasons that I have behind writing it. So yeah, so I gotta figure it out. And right now I have to think about the Enforcer Enigma, which is still in production, even though it comes out in 3 weeks. Print editions. And the heroine's journey. So I'm thinking about those 2 first, but I am talking about the Mana Lovejoy story because it is written. So once something is written, I'm like, okay, I can just talk about it. It is written. So you will get it. You can at least rest assured, rather than me being all hedgy like I mostly am about my projects. I appreciate it. He says that they don't mind waiting for the print editions of my books. And I have to say, I really appreciate you guys being patient with me on the print editions. It's a physical copy, and like a physical product of anything is just more quality control, and it's just a little bit more work. Yeah, thank you all for saying that. I'm scrolling through looking for questions. Catherine asks, Catherine wants to know if the Enforcer Enigma book will be available by Christmas. Oh, unequivocally. Right now, my best guess on the Enforcer Enigma is that it is probably going to be at least, so it's supposed to come out on the 1st of August, but the print edition will probably be anywhere from a week. Definitely I won't have it within a week of the first, of the digital edition coming out, but it will probably be before the end of that month. So you should definitely, so if it's coming out, or if the digital is coming out August 1st, you should definitely have it by September 1st. Like, don't worry. Like, it's delayed, but it's not delayed that much. It's just a delay on the printing press end of the spectrum, really. Shanoa, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, asks if I have a favorite fun mask for going out. No, I'm in rotation, so I have a bunch of just silly ones. I like the ones that loop over the ears best, and I like them not to be too thick, you know, the cords around my ears, so that's pretty, it's just comfort dictated at this juncture, mostly for me with the masks. I have there's a sort of industrial material, spongy one that I kind of like, but yeah, I just, you know, I don't frankly go out in public that often, so I don't really have to wear a mask all that much, you know, like to and from the office, and, you know, when I go pick up groceries or something, and then when I'm going on my daily walk. But apart from that, so, you know, I just have a few I'm rotating through. I think if and when, you know, there's a possibility of like public appearances with masks and stuff, I'll probably invest in some fancier ones, but for right now, just, you know, they're just plain like black or colored, or, you know, have a sort of a pattern on them or what have you. Eddie says that they have heard about the ripped bodice and has bought from them in the past and really likes them, so that's good to know. Oh, and Danny as well. Oh, Danny, yes, the Ripped Bodice is called the Ripped Bodice because it is a romance specialty store, but they have always carried all of my books, whether they're technically romances or not. So, Molly wants to know if there are any independent vendors for gifts or trinkets that I've discovered during quarantine. Well, I've talked about Nikki and Belmont chocolates before, but they're my favorite chocolates in existence. And I just took the time to figure out how to buy them. I'm not gonna really shout out right now because I just went there recently to buy some more chocolate, and she seems to be sold out at the moment. So yay for her. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun discovering tea vendors, you know, like new tea vendors, and also new like specialty chocolate stores and that sort of a thing. Because I don't have events, I haven't been buying like jewelry or clothing or anything like that very much. So my biggest like initial discovery at the beginning was Poshmark, which is a resale vendor, where I bopped on and bought a bunch of stuff because I was like, you know what? Those shoes I love are just dying, and this is an opportunity for me to take some time to like research and replace them. And that's what I recommend. So for Poshmark, if you're somebody who's like, I love these Fluvogs that I bought 10 years ago and are a very specific size and style, Poshmark is a great place to go and like try and find those exact same shoes or those exact same shoes in a different color and just buy them again. Just, you know, be careful with the listings and make sure you ask lots of questions of the vendor, like, you know, was this a non-smoking house and all that sorts of things. But yeah, so I bought some stuff on Poshmark, which I'm really excited about. I can show you one of them because it's right here. This is a classic, like, Gail, is that really a necessity? But some of you will know that I have a brown fur wrap jacket coat thing that I love, and I got a white one. So here it is. You can't really see it, but, and it's just like it's kind of like a double layered cape with a faux fur ruff. And it's taken up residence in my office on the back of one of my chairs, and it looks very boudoir draped over a chair. But that was a Poshmark find. And basically I already owned the brown version and I just bought the white version. And partly that was because, at least at the beginning of all of this, it was very cold in my office and I just wanted something that I could throw on around the office. But of course it will also come to events with me eventually. And I keep thinking about how cute it will look with that faux leather teapot, the white teapot bag that I have. I think they will look so cute together. What am I reading these days? Well, I have a terrible confession. So, most of you know that I generally tend to read a lot. I mean, like a book a week or more. But I have been just off reading recently. So I got pretty sick, not COVID, but pretty sick. And just was sort of dizzy and out of it and did not feel like, and couldn't really focus on words. And so I started binge watching YouTube and other television platforms. And just sort of stopped reading for a while. So I haven't really picked it back up. I've been rereading some old favorite comfort reads, which, if you Google Gail Carriger comfort reads, those are the ones I'm rereading. Blog posts on them. But I haven't really read anything new in a while, which is sad. And it's just because I just can't seem to focus or something. I don't know. I'm hoping I'll pull myself out of it. Lavender asks if I'm participating in the San Diego Comic-Con online events this year. No, I wasn't invited to be a formal participant, and so I'm not part of the virtual con. I am going to be part of Coastal Magic, which is a virtual, normal convention that's actually a virtual convention this year, and it's the beginning of next year. It's in February, I think, of next year. So that's the only, major convention I have on the docket. I actually have attended a few virtual conventions kind of incognito, not as a guest, not as an official guest, but more as just an attendee, because I wanted to see what virtual conventions were like. And I found them pretty valuable and useful and interesting, and they worked for me in terms of how the panels were presented and the chats and stuff. So I will be doing virtual conventions because I think they're kind of fun. Casey wants to know if there are any new designs coming to Zazzle. So Zazzle is my merchandising shop. Kelly, my assistant, is working on putting a couple of designs onto masks. So Zazzle has a masks option they've introduced, and so we're gonna try and see if we can get some of the designs onto masks. And we've had a couple people ask anyway. It's just Kelly has also had some injuries and been sick, so we're a two-woman operation, and it's a little slow. Eddie wants to know who the model is for the Enforcer Enigma. He's so hot. Yes, he is. The model for Judd is so hot. I secretly think we might have had an interloping model in the last live, which I didn't realize because I'm dumb until I left. Because there was a commenter who was like, that model is really hot and he looks a lot like me. And I was like, wait a second, was that you? But he's from a stock art supplier, so I don't know exactly who he is. But sometimes that happens. Sometimes the model is like, hey, I'm on a book, and then finds the author and befriends the author. That happened to me with the model on the cover of the American Reticence. I'm friends with him on Instagram now, but so maybe it will happen with the model who's on the cover of the Enforcer Enigma. But yeah, he was so perfect. He has a whole photo shoot on one of the stock art suppliers that I use. And there were 6 different pictures of him that I was like, well, that would be a good cover, and that would be a good cover, and that. And I was like, I'm only doing one book. But I love the pose. I think he's perfect for Judd. I couldn't be more thrilled with the cover, I think. We were talking about it, so I should bring it up. But yeah, I think he's just so ideal. Here he is. Oh, there. Yeah. Anyway, I love him. It's great. Finding a cover, the perfect cover model is always this euphoric, synergistic experience when you're an author, because, we have this ideal of what a character looks like in our head, and you can go to my Pinterest boards for all my different characters to see some of those ideals, and you know, we'll pick actors or whatever to pretend represent those characters, and then finding one that's just like, oh, perfect, is such a joy. Robin says, I just finished Charming the Prince, which I recommended, and I love how much of a warm hug it was, and can I recommend similar books? Warm hug of a books. So like I said, you can Google Gail Carriger comfort reads, and I have a list there of warm hug of a books from my perspective, and I think I just pick sort of different versions of that, because, you know, but what have something else came up recently, man. We should start a thread in the Parasol Protector group of like warm hug books. In other words, these are books that just make you feel like so happy and comforted when you're done with them, which is kind of how I try to write. I think Enforcer Enigma is a bit of a warm hug of a book, quite frankly. But I haven't, like I said, I haven't been reading very much recently, so I don't have one to pull off the top of my head, I'm afraid. I wish I should be more prepared for this kind of thing. Danny wants to know if there are any fabrics or wallpapers available in the same designs as those on the Finishing School series of covers. I know that the background patterning for the Delightfully Deadly books, which and for Claw and Courtship, which are kind of wallpaper things, are mostly stock art supplied, and so they should be available to convert if you're going to use. Somebody knows this because Crafter, there's Spoonflower. So you can use a place called Spoonflower to create your own patterns. And I, of course, would never recommend that you do that with one of my traditionally published books, but you can. But that is a way to essentially make your own fabric patterns if you so choose. And there are definitely like wallpaper-like patterns there. So that's a question I've never had before. Scrolling through. I'm sorry, I'm not really following some of the comment conversations that are going on, but I love seeing you guys talking to each other. And Nicole, I can't see the rest of your questions. So, Nicole has just started Eternal Love. And yes, you're talking about the Historian BL version series as well, which I also know about, as well as there's a couple of others. We are suddenly, oh, there we go. I got the rest of the question. So, Nicole, yes, I'm familiar. Yes. Nicole is asking me about various Asian dramas, and one of the things that I have done recently is done a deep frickin' dive into Asian dramas. I started with Eternal Love and have not stopped, and they've pretty much been sort of playing in the background of my life for the past 2 months. Eternal Love is the one that started it. It is on Netflix, and it is just beautiful. It is a beautiful experience of a series. It is something like 56-hour-long episodes, so be aware of the time commitment to Asian dramas. But it's out of China. It's this beautiful atmospheric gods involved with each other, thousands of years, sweeping epic fantasy, basically. But the interesting thing to me about a lot of these dramas is from the writer perspective. I'm very interested in the pacing of things, like the romance threads, which are much slower than it is in for us Americans in film and book form. And I'm just really interested in the tropes, which are somewhat familiar in certain, like there's, amnesia tropes and enemies to lovers tropes and all of these other things that are being picked up and used, but they're so different when the source country is not Western. And I'm just finding it, from a writer perspective, extremely interesting and quite inspiring, actually, to kind of experience these shows. And, like, confession time, like, prior to this, I just found them very slow, and I never got into them, and I didn't have the patience for them. I think I had to get sick. But also, I wasn't looking at them and thinking about them from a writer and storyteller perspective. And once I put that sort of analytical hat on, which partly has to do with writing the heroine's journey right now, it made the experience totally different for me. And also just immersing myself in kind of the beauty of them really was great. So yeah, I've been watching a lot of Asian dramas recently. I got into Thai dramas as well, which like immediately made me fascinated with the Thai language. So I've been sort of sideline studying Thai language, conversational language, and culture as well, which occasioned me calling up Piper, my friend Piper J. Drake, the author, who's also Thai, who I do a podcast, 20-minute delay. We do a travel podcast together. And I basically called her up on the phone. I was like, we have to have a conversation about Thailand and the Thai language for 2 hours. And we did. And she answered a lot of my questions. And we now have absolute plans to visit Thailand. I was like, Thailand has always been on my bucket list, and now it is going to happen. Not in the near future, but eventually, because I have to go. I have to go. The food, you guys. The food. Anyway, and that's part of the thing that I love, of course, about most of these Asian dramas, is that food is such a huge plot point often. Like, family and food and friends and food and communal meals and like gestures and food as a love offering, like food as a love language, food, like mistakes made around food. Like there's the Asian or the Thai BL dramas, which are the boys love, or the Yoi dramas, which are all these gay-ish relationships, and they'll make mistakes around food. Like they'll be dating each other. These two boys will be dating each other, and they'll be like having a communal meal, and they're supposed to just be friends. And one of them will like put a spoonful of food on the other one's plate, and it's just the biggest gaffe, because only a romantic relationship would do something like that. And like just learning all this stuff about like the cultures around food and romance and food makes me so happy, because let's be fair, food is basically my biggest passion in life. So, yeah, and then of course the clothing is fantastic in the, especially in the fantasy ones. And Eternal Love just has some of the most beautiful outfits I've seen in so long, and they're just these like layers of diaphanous robes. And I just want to wear flowing robes and go walking through the cherry trees in full view, like in full bloom, and cast myself on a large boulder dramatically, and then wait 20,000 years for my true love to show up. Right? Anyway, that was a segue. How did my writing process change between the heroine's journey and fiction? Oh, wow, that's a big one. And I'll probably talk more about this when the heroine's journey comes out in a couple of months. But I will say that I find nonfiction much more difficult to write than fiction. And that's because all of your statements need to be supported. It's evidence-based, at least the way I write it, it is. So there's a lot of stopping and researching. In which way it's a lot more like writing a Parasol verse book than it is writing a San Andreas book, because when I'm writing alt history, I also have to stop and research quite a bit, Victorian times and stuff. But there's still a great deal more with nonfiction. And authors talk about imposter syndrome a lot, and I don't, at this juncture in my career, I don't really suffer from that very much anymore so far as fiction is concerned, but it turns out I still have feelings of like self-worth and nerves, and whether I'm the right person to write this particular book when it comes to nonfiction. So I mean, don't worry, I'll get over it. I always do. But so there's also that. There's a sort of a different emotional thing for me with nonfiction, as it turns out, than it is for fiction, because it feels like more of a risk. Fiction, I feel like, I got this, we can do it. I'm always nervous when I put a new book out into the world, you know, like Enforcer Enigma is coming out, and I'm always nervous that you're not gonna like it, that's gonna upset people, that, you know, I got something wrong. But I'm a lot more nervous about a nonfiction book. So pretty much everything for me was different, from the core writing of the book to how I'm producing it, to the layout, to the look of the book, to talking to my cover artist about doing a nonfiction cover, to finding the right copy editor for nonfiction. So every aspect of writing and production is different for nonfiction, but also like my emotional feelings about nonfiction are completely different also. So Lavender wants to know if I have any new Chinese or Korean TV suggestions. Ooh, what did I watch recently? So there is a couple. So check out if you're into BL or Yoi or Yaoi or however you pronounce it. There's a Chinese series called History 2, all one word, the number 2, History 2. And there are a couple in that series. It's a series of different videos, but there are a couple. Crossing the Line is good, and then there's another one, the name of which I can't remember off the top of my head. But those are cute, and those are both Chinese, and somehow managed to get through the censors for gay romance. So yay! Give them a watch before they're taken down. Doc wants to know about Anne of Green Gables with in relationship to the Heroine's Journey. No, although that would have been a good choice. No, I chose heavy hitters to analyze for the Heroine's Journey because I wanted to pick narratives that had been extremely commercially successful relatively recently. So I chose 2 of the biggest, heaviest hitters, but I'm not going to tell you which ones. Wahaha. Ooh, Lauren, that's very interesting. Lauren says something about the hero's journey as a copywriting technique. Yeah, what was most interesting and what is the most kind of, I guess, angsty, feminist, ranty part of the Heroine's Journey book is me talking about the fact that a zeitgeist-wide acceptance of and glorification of the hero's journey has a material impact on our culture. Both in how we treat literature and how we treat definitions of masculinity and femininity. And it is a long and complicated discussion, but it has had profound critical repercussions that include things that you know instinctively and don't realize you know, like the pillarization of the romance genre, or the fact that romantic comedies and comedic and stories with happy endings are never recognized in literary circles or in screenwriting or movie awards. And that has to do, that as far as I'm concerned, has directly to do with the fact that critics have applauded the hero's journey and pillarized the heroines, which has its roots also in the Victorian disgust with with Gothic literature, which was a critical disgust because the Gothics were mostly written by and read by women. So there's a whole misogynistic thing going on as well. Yay! Anyway, that's why I wrote a book. We'll move on to another question, shall we? Lavender wants to know if I have a suggestion for a layman's book outlining the hero's journey. You can read Campbell. Campbell is really hard to read. But there, you can just read the Wikipedia, frankly, on the hero's journey. One of the concerns that I have with the hero's journey is that it's conflated with Jungian psychological analysis. So there are kind of 2 approaches to it. There's looking at the hero's journey from a narrative standpoint as somebody who wishes to write books and movies or whatever that take advantage of the beats or the kind of pulse touch points of the hero's journey. And then there is taking the hero's journey and self-applying it or applying it to your own personal growth. And psychological analysis, so the Jungian approach. And Campbell kind of does both. And there's a lot of sort of character portrayal and character analysis and book, how to write books out there that do the beats analysis of the hero's journey. But you can get a basic look at it from from Wikipedia. I retell it, so I do a basic outline of both. I do a basic outline and 2 pop culture examples of the hero's journey and then also of the heroine's journey, because I want people to understand how I'm using language when I'm talking about them, so what I mean when I say archetype or what have you. And because the hero's journey is better understood, so I also just do a quick analysis of the hero's journey. So you get that in the book. It's part of the book. Because I'm not trying to say that one journey is better or worse than another. I'm just trying to show people that there are these two, and you can think about pop culture and what you are consuming for entertainment in light of these 2 possible models. There are also other models. So I do talk about the heroes in the book. So you should be able to pick out this book not knowing very much about either and learn what you need to know. That's my hope. Hopefully, if you read it, you will tell me if I got it right or not. Annie wants to know if in all my spare time we will ever get more with Marvin. Marvin the Merman, one of my favorite characters. He has quite a large, still a side character, but a larger role than he's had in previous books in the Enforcer Enigma. So I think you'll be pleased with that book if you like Marvin, because he's quite a bit of screen time. He turned out to be necessary to the plot in several ways. Robert wants to know how my writing style and habits have changed over the years. That's a really good question, because they've absolutely changed. It's weird to think about, because I feel like when I wrote Soulless, I kind of had no idea what I was doing, and in a strange way that was a good thing, because I didn't really know the mistakes I was making, but I made them in such a way that somehow that book had an appeal because of its lack of artifice, I guess, the style in which it was written and everything. As the years have gone on, I feel like personally I've become a better writer, but perhaps I've lost a little bit of the breeziness that maybe was initially in the way I write, because I think more about the technical scale of writing, and I have absorbed more of it as a practice as an author. The interesting thing, I think, more than how my habits have changed, is the ways in which they haven't, in terms of every book is always different. I go into this book, when I was writing the Enforcer Enigma at the beginning of the year, you think, oh, I've done 2 previous books in the series, I've written 30 odd books at this juncture, this is old hat, and yet there's still going to be a thing that you encounter that surprises you when you write, or surprises me when I write. There's still going to be a problem that happens with this book that I've never happened with any of my other books, from a craft perspective or from a production perspective. And that is one of the things that I have learned to accept and be really kind of relaxed and sanguine about. And maybe that's what's changed more than anything, is I used to get really thrown and freak out a lot when something went terribly, terribly wrong with any part of the book writing process, from the creative side to the production side. And now I've learned coping mechanisms to separate worries and concerns from the creative process in a way that makes me more effective. I've also learned a lot of things about myself in terms of burnout and how to control burnout, pacing myself as well as the works themselves, but not taking on too many obligations, learning how to say no as a writer, particularly in terms of marketing opportunities or convention offers and stuff, was a huge skill set that I needed to develop, because events take a lot out of me, and that impacts my ability to accomplish work and make deadlines and stuff. So I think, I just learned a lot, I think, about myself as a writer and my process more than anything, and how to set up my my day so that it best takes advantage of my natural inclinations as a writer, of that process. And then of course I get sick, or COVID-19 happens, and I'm oh, all my coping mechanisms are not prepared for a disaster of this magnitude. but that's part of the learning process, is right. Like, so I haven't been really able to write very much. Now, part of that is because I have 2 books in production right now, and those are just taking a lot of time. Like, it just takes time to format books and upload them and do all of the things that I need to do to get these books out into the world. And there are 2 of them right now that I'm doing this with. So I'm doing Enforcer Enigma, which is coming out soon, and Heroine's Journey, which I want to get uploaded soon so that it has a long pre-order window. And so that's just taking up, and that just means I don't have time to write. And that's fine. I built that into my schedule. But like when I wake up in the morning, and even though I'm sick, all I want to do is write a short story about Mana and Lovejoy, I've learned to just like sit in bed, pick up my computer, and type for 5 hours. Because that story needed to come out right then and there, and I don't do anything, and I structure my day so that if that happens to me, I can take advantage of it, because it rarely happens anymore. So, you know, that's kind of part of this. But also like being kind of gentle, I guess, with myself was a big learning process, not driving myself too hard. I'm very driven, and I like that about myself. I like that as a personality trait for me. It means I can accomplish things. It means I finish books. It means I give you 3 books a year. But also being like, okay, we're in extraordinary circumstances right now, and I don't have to write. Like, it's all right. It will come back. Like, if I've learned anything else from being a writer after over 10 years, it's that the writing returns to us. And if I just don't worry about it and leave it alone for a while, you know, Lovejoy will wake me up at 6 o'clock in the morning and say, I have a story that you need to type, right? But I have to not worry about that. And that's one of the reasons I'm so cagey about talking about the next project I'm working on or the next book that I'm writing at the time. And that's because I don't want to promise you something that might get delayed, because I am being kinder to myself about those delays and letting myself rest and trusting that the subconscious part of me that does the writing, the muse in the background, is maybe taking a nap. But she'll wake up, and then she'll have something to say. And I just need to put myself in a place where I'm open to that and welcome it in whatever form it takes. Even if occasionally the form it takes is a nonfiction book. Lisa wants to know, who was the last science fiction writer that I read for inspiration? That's a really good question. I must have read something. You know what? I tend to read, you know, like Scientific America or scientific journals for inspiration when I'm writing sci-fi. And that's what I did when I was writing Fifth Gender. I was reading a lot of also anthropological, like, journals on gender analysis and like theoretical treatises on like alien life and stuff like that. So I tend to get inspiration from nonfiction, not fiction, for direct inspiration. Like, I'll read other books for entertainment, but for actual inspiration, when I'm actively seeking it, I go for nonfiction. And the same holds true for like the Parasolvers stuff. If I will delve deeply into like primary and secondary sources on the Victorian era if I'm looking for inspiration, or blogs or Wikipedia, that kind of thing. Robin wants to know what I voted for in the last round of Madame Escu's Temporal Entourage's Tea Time Gauntlet, for those of you who have not been playing along. It's been very exciting. And whether I voted for cheese puffs or barbecue pork buns. So gruyere, which I think is how you say it in French, or bao. I went for the pork buns. I have to say I'm not a fan of either with tea, but I have a slight inclination for something that has protein in it, or a bit more protein in it, so I went with the pork buns, which I love anyway. I prefer the baked ones to the steamed ones, but I'll take a pork bun. I love a pork bun. Eddie wants to know if we will learn more about other shifters in the Enforcer Enigma, like pack dynamics or maybe loner behaviors. Okay, loner behaviors. You do learn about 2 sets of other shifters in the Enforcer Enigma, and the next book in the series, which I haven't written yet, but I know who it's going to be about, you will learn more about you will learn even more specifically about 2 other land-bound shifters. In the Enforcer Enigma, you actually learn a bit about sea folk. So you learn something about a couple of different kinds of sea shifters. But you'll learn quite a bit. I think you'll probably learn quite a bit more in the next book in the San Andreas series about a couple of other types of shifter, and you will learn what those types are and who the 2 new characters are for that book in the Enforcer. It sets them up. So there will be no doubt who's coming next, and I hope you're excited about it, because I love them. Scrolling through. Looking for more questions. We only really have time for one more. Eddie wants to know if I have a favorite chocolate. Yes, I like dark chocolate, and I like chocolate with fruit. I know that makes me a weirdo, but I love specifically chocolate and raspberry together. That's one of my absolute favorite combinations. My favorite chocolates in existence combine chocolate and white chocolate and passion fruit. I am a person who eats white chocolate. Sue me. I'll even take milk chocolate. I generally like chocolate. I'm an appreciator of chocolate, but not a chocoholic or a craver of chocolate. I like it, but I will just as happily eat, not chocolate gummies or sour things or what have you. But yeah, I love fruit, so I tend to like fruit and chocolate in combination. That's one of my favorite things. Although chocolate and nuts is nice too. I tend to like it cut with something. Will there be more stories in the Crudrat 5th Gender universe? Yes. Someday I will write the second one of the Crudrat series. I have outline notes for that, but I'll have to climb into that universe. That particular voice is very strong, so it would require some free time that I don't currently have. And I have a really, really, really good idea for the next Tinkered Stars mystery, which would also have Triss and Dre as the main characters. It would be more of a mystery, less of a romance, but it would be really good. And I have such a good idea for it, but it just hasn't leapt to the front creatively. The next Parasol-verse novella leapt to the front instead, so that's the one that I'm working on right now, or will be working on. I've started it. It's started an outline and everything. But yeah, there will be more, I believe, because I have good ideas for it, so there should be more. Robin wants to know if I've seen The Great Flower Fight on Netflix. People keep recommending it to me, and I probably will watch it because I do love that kind of thing. But I haven't seen it yet. And I watched Warrior Nun. Also, nuns fighting sounds great, but I have not watched it, no. Scrolling through, looking for more questions. Will we get novellas for any of the vampire characters in the Parasol-verse? That's a really good question. I've talked about the fact that I gravitate towards shifters rather than vampires as a rule, although I probably was a vampire if I was anything. I don't know. Currently I have no plans for that, but I don't rule it out. It might be fun to write vampires at some point. Clinton wants to know if I knew Donna before she was the cover model on Soulless. For those of you unaware of Soulless's history and backstory, you can Google Soulless, how did the cover come to be, or Gail Carriger Soulless cover explained or something, and it will come up. But essentially, Donna, who was the cover model for all 5 of the Parasol Protectorate books, friended me on Facebook after she became my cover model and basically was like, hi, I'm the model for your cover. And I was like, no. And we have become friends, like actual in-person friends ever since. She lives down in LA and I went and met her a couple of times now, and she helped throw a tea party for Timeless. She is the proprietress of Geeky Teas. So if you want to order tea, you can order some tea from her online. She's awesome. Geeky Teas is a store that is also part cat rescue, part board game store, and they also used to have stand-up comedy. So they used to be this sort of catch-all thing, but now they're mostly subsisting by selling the teas, and I hope they make it through because it's lovely. But Donna is fabulous. I love her. But no, I did not know her before she became the cover. Oh, Nicole, very good. Nicole, for the previous questioner who wanted a warm hug of a book, you should read The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I have been recommending it as much as possible all the time for several months since it's come out, and it is unequivocally a big warm hug of a book. So The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Thank you, Nicole. That is the perfect hug book. Go read it. It's great. It is adorable and so sweet. I get all verklempt just thinking about it. Maria wants to know whether we're going to be looking forward to a Delightfully Deadly or Claw and Courtship novella. The one I am writing is another Delightfully Deadly novella. There will be more Claw and Courtship, I promise, but right now, Delightfully Deadly was the one that sprang into my head next, so that's the one I'm working on. And no, I'm not going to tell you which character. Wahaha. You're going to have to wait. Eddie wants to know if I will traditionally publish again anytime soon. Not right now. My agent and I talked about a new middle grade or a new young adult series pitching out, but to be perfectly frank, traditional publishing in New York has been pretty shaky right now, and the situation with COVID has made them, if anything, even more shaky. I couldn't come up with a pitch that went all the way through marketing and for my young adult house that they really wanted, that they were really excited about, and that I was really excited about. So I kind of have to have the right project to want to move into trad again. And also right now, I'd really like to see some material changes in traditional publishing in terms of editorial staffing and other authors that they take on and represent and put out into the world. Traditional publishing has a diversity problem, and it seems disingenuous to support it with my limited talent, shall we say, until that problem is at least an effort, if not actually, is shown towards fixing it, if not actually fixing it. So I'd like to see that first, shall we say, before I re-enter traditional at the moment. And we'll see. Have I watched Hamilton on Disney? Nope, I don't have Disney. I am not a supporter of Disney. Sorry. So I still haven't seen Hamilton. Someday. Ooh, my battery is going, of course, right near the end, but I'm ready. I have the plug already. Hold on. Okay. There's discussion. I'm in the background. Stop commenting, okay, everybody, so I can get through everyone's. But there's some fun comments about doing a food tour of Thailand with me and Piper. And yeah, wouldn't we all want to do that? Piper and I are both obsessed with food. Eddie wants to know, asks a more intrusive question about the Tinkered Star second book, and yes, you're correct, Eddie, that is the subject matter. I'm not going to say more about it, because again, haven't written it yet. When will the Heroines journey be up for pre-order? Robin asks, very, very soon. If you're a member of the Chirp, you will get a special announcement about this. So look for that in your inbox, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. Definitely this month, I hope. It's just a matter of getting it listed. Other people want to know if anyone's watching Drag Race. I am not watching Drag Race at the moment, but or Lindsay Broker. Oh, Lindsay Broker is an interesting discussion point. Lindsay Broker writes some steampunk and science fiction and very friendship-driven stuff, so you might give her a try. She's often exclusive to Amazon, though, so I don't recommend her all that often, because I don't like to recommend books that are not available widely for an international audience, because I know a lot of you watching are international. Oh, Dick wants to know the Changeless Blameless story. All right, we're running a little long, but I'll do it anyway, because what else do I have to do with my life right now? Changeless has a cliffhanger ending, which people talk about all the time, and my pat answer most of the time when people ask me is, why does Changeless have a cliffhanger ending? And usually I say, well, buy me a drink at a bar sometime and I'll tell you the real reason. We don't have that option anymore. So here's the real reason. Changeless has a cliffhanger ending because when I signed my contract for Soulless, it was a 2-book contract. and I wanted to write more in the series. So I wrote a cliffhanger so that when my editor read Changeless, she basically finished the book, picked up the telephone, called me up, and said, "What happens next?" And I said, "Davey, why are you talking to me and not to my agent about the next contract?" So the answer is this author was being manipulative as all get up, and also I wanted to write more books in a series, and this was one way to get them to commission more books in a series. So the reason you have 5 books in the Parasol Protectorate series is because there's a cliffhanger ending on Changeless. So, and because my publisher is a science fiction and fantasy publisher, they don't mind a cliffhanger. If I had been with a romance publisher, they would have been totally verboten. I never would have been able to get away with it. But because it was sci-fi fantasy, they were fine with the cliffhanger. And most of my readers were too. Although, you should feel very, very sorry for my earliest readers and superfans who got into those books right away, because they all read Soulless and then Changeless, which came out relatively close, about 6 months later, and then they had to wait for Blameless. And I always remind people who are my age or older of having to wait between season 3 and season 4 of Star Trek The Next Generation, because that was the doozy of a summer where we had the Borg season split. Anyway. Yeah, so that's why there's a cliffhanger, because I wanted to write more books, and you got more books because of the cliffhanger. So, reason to be okay with a cliffhanger. There it is. All right, I think I'm gonna close it down. Yeah, I know a bunch of people have a hard time forgiving Lord Macon for his behavior at the end of Changeless, but there it is. Girl's gotta do what a girl's gotta do sometimes, and sometimes that means making an alpha dude, you know, overreact in an emotional way to his feelings. Casey wants to know 30-odd books. Well, I've written 30-odd books. I haven't published 30-odd books. I think I've published about 25 books or something like that. But if you go to my website, there is a books tab, and at the bottom of the books tab is all Gail Carriger books, which is basically everything I've written that is currently available. So you can see them all there. And some of them are reprints, and some of them are graphic adaptations. But I think there's about 25 original works, so that's where you can find them all. Alrighty, I'm not seeing very many more questions. I heartily apologize if I missed your question. Please be patient with me. If you really, really want an answer, you can always drop me a calling card via my website, and that just sends me an email and I can get back to you that way. Otherwise, hopefully next time I do one of these Q&As, which will be right after Enforcer Enigma comes out, I will answer your question then. I appreciate everybody's patience and all of you who stayed for this very long live Gail is a Talking Head, and thank you for your fantastic questions. I wouldn't do it if you guys didn't have questions for me, so I really, really appreciate it. And next time I talk to you, at least some of you will have read the Enforcer Enigma, so yay! And I will see you next month.